What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Steel Curtain Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of SteelCurtain.com, and joining me, as always, the Steel Curtain contributor and co-host, Shayne Kubas. Shayne, we are coming off the NFL trade deadline. Don't want to bury the lead. That's the big news today as we are recording this show. Everybody was on the edge of their seat yesterday, and rightfully so. It's one of the biggest days of the year around the NFL, but many Steelers fans are waking up disappointed today because Pittsburgh did not make a trade. We're going to talk about that. That's going to be our big discussion topic for today. And we'll talk about maybe why that's not the worst thing. Shayne, I got some good evidence to suggest that I think the Steelers did the right thing here.
I totally agree, and we're going to get more into that a little bit later, but it was certainly a deadline to remember. I will say, typically, even though it is a big day in the NFL for a lot of reasons, it's usually not as explosive as it was this year. I will say that, and we'll definitely spend some time talking about that, how it affects not just the Steelers, but the NFL as a whole, but it certainly was a fun day yesterday.
All right, we will get to some of the big trades around the NFL, maybe how they've impacted the Steelers in some way, shape, or form. We'll talk about we'll share our notes from Steelers versus Colts, the big win from the Steelers, maybe their biggest win of the season so far. Sure. And we'll obviously talk about Pittsburgh's Sunday night football game against the LA Chargers and the huge implications that are on the line that I don't know if anybody's really talking about yet. But we're at that point where we need to say what really this could mean for the team by the end of the season, how big this win or loss could potentially be. So let's dive into it, Shayne. And let's start with Steelers versus Colts, 27-20. Pittsburgh got a victory here in a game that I predicted as a loss. You predicted as a loss. Yeah. A lot of analysts predicted as a loss because when you watch the Steelers the 2 weeks prior to that, their defense couldn't stop anybody against Cincinnati. And then they fell apart in the fourth quarter against the Green Bay Packers, 28 points allowed. I think 21 or 28 points allowed in the fourth quarter. It was bad.
It was 28.
28. It was bad. So they were able to show up to this game thanks to 6 takeaways. And you can't count on that every week. And we know that, but it was nice to see the defense perform well because even if you take the takeaways out of the picture, Shayne, in terms of yard per pass, yards per rush, they were still very effective. I mean, they still did the best job against Jonathan Taylor that any team has done so far in the NFL. And so without the takeaways, you probably don't win this game, quite frankly, but the defense played well regardless. It's the offense that's still a little bit concerning.
Yeah, the defense overall, and you can, again, talk about the turnovers, and to their credit, a lot of the turnovers were truly like the defense making plays. It wasn't, the Colts just fumbling around and not doing stuff right. Like, Daniel Jones had the pick to Peyton Wilson, which was definitely, like, shouldn't have thrown that ball, but Peyton Wilson also put himself in a good position to see that ball coming and to get it. But, you talk about the batted pass, like, sure, getting an interception off that's pretty lucky, but the play itself is a good play that started it. Lands in Jack Sawyer's arms. You talk about the pick at the end of the game, great play by Joey to end the game. Like, most of these plays were truly like the Steelers defense doing stuff to the Colts. It wasn't just happening to them, right? So in general, definitely the best, I think, performance overall the defense has had, especially when you factor in the difficulty level. You can talk about the Browns game. It's the Browns. Like, let's be real about it. This is the hottest team in the NFL by far, especially offensively, and we definitely put the brakes on that game. So.
No, it was nice to see that Steelers were creating those takeaways rather than just the ball bouncing their way. Like it often does for them.
It does typically.
It's so bizarre, Shayne, that the Steelers have 2 games this season, halfway through the year, where they had 5 or more takeaways in a game. But interestingly, in both of those games, and the other one was obviously against the New England Patriots back in week 3, they lost in almost every statistical category, almost every single one, except for Mike Tomlin's forte, the takeaway department. And when they win that, they tend to win the games. And so the problem is it's just not a reliable and repeatable philosophy from game to game. You can pull a few of these out every year, but the game to game aspect of it, you can't rely on. And that's what we've been kind of arguing for several years now, Shayne, is that when you get into the playoffs, you can't expect to be +3, +4 in the takeaway department in order to come away victorious. You have to find other ways to be more efficient. So we'll get into a deeper breakdown here in just a second. Let's talk about the big moves around the NFL at the trade deadline, Shayne, and almost all of them came from the New York Jets.
Yes.
Had a fire sale. I mean, at the rate they were going, I'm surprised they didn't unload more players like a Jerry Johnson or a Breece Hall. Like, they were ditching everybody. But to their credit, I mean, you talk about, I don't know if I've ever seen a team have so much draft capital in a 2-year span. All of a sudden, I mean, Sauce Gardner to the Indianapolis Colts for 2 first-round picks. I mean, this is a Steelers podcast. We got to talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
That's Micah Parsons level stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking. That's a lot of capital for a cornerback who just signed a $120 million contract this very offseason. I mean, good move, bad move by the Colts. And then the other one was Quinnen Williams going to Dallas for a first and second round pick.
I think let's start with the Sauce trade. I think obviously if you're the Jets and you're in the position you're in where you have Sauce Gardner and you're 1-7, you would take the picks, right? You absolutely have to take the picks. And from the reporting I've read, it sounds like they weren't like, oh, we need to get rid of Sauce Gardner. It was teams were calling about him, and the Colts eventually said, all right, screw it. Here's 2 firsts. And then the GM had to be like, all right, I guess we're trading Sauce Gardner. And I understand that for sure on their end. For the Colts side of things, just like any trade like this, where you give up multiple high picks and, a player in the case of A.D. Mitchell, not one that they were particularly fond of at this point, but still a player that they took in the draft pretty recently and pretty highly. The only way that this ends up looking great is if you win a championship, right? Like, this is a move you make to win a championship. The same way the Packers, if they don't win a championship the next couple of years, people are going to look at the Micah Parsons deal and go, okay, like, he's great and everything, but what did it win you, right? Like, that's what people are going to talk about ultimately. And whether that's fair or not is up for debate, but that is the bar that's going to be set now. Can you win a Super Bowl with this core now that you've added a premium player at an important position? I don't know about that, but that's what they have to do, right, to be able to make this work.
Yeah, I mean, the Sauce deal, Shayne, how could you not make that trade?
Yeah, if you're the Jets, you have to.
And again, to their credit, look what's going on. I know if you're a Jets fan, you're all disgruntled. You traded away maybe your 2 best players on your roster.
For sure. Yeah.
This team has no hope, and they don't. They don't have any hope. But you look around, you could do the AFC, but look at their own division.
Yeah.
You've got Josh Allen and now Drake May that you have to go against every single year. Your quarterback situation is the worst in the NFL. Your head coach is maybe not very good. Why not start building for the future already? And you've got a boatload of capital to do. 5 first-round picks, I think, over the next 2 seasons, and several second-round picks in there. Like, they've got so much to work with. Their window's not now. It's a couple of years down the line. Credit to the Colts for being aggressive. I mean, if you think you can win now, you better hope Daniel Jones is the answer, but you better hope you can win now. And I think they are still at least a solid football team. I'll see if they revert back to their own ways. The ones that have deeper Steelers ties here are the Jakobi Meyers trade and the Rashid Shaheed trade.
Yep.
Myers was sent from the Las Vegas Raiders to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had major injuries pop up here recently. Travis Hunter, their top draft pick, on IR with an injury, and then Brian Thomas Jr., high ankle sprain. Those are 2 first-round wide receivers. They weren't willing to leave the position to chance. It's not very good. Parker Washington, not very good. Like, they needed to get aggressive, and they outbid, reportedly from Deanna Rossini of The Athletic, the Steelers and the Bills, at least, who are in the running for Jakobi Meyers. I don't know what it would have cost had Jacksonville not been so intent on making that trade. Maybe the Steelers could have pulled it off, but it ended up being a 4th and a 6th round pick for Myers. And so essentially what you're looking at is a half-year rental of Jakobi Meyers for a 4th and a 6th round pick. It's kind of rich, but if you think you're in a window to compete right now and the AFC has never been more wide open, I understand the sentiment there. And again, you've got big injuries at the position. They felt like they needed to get something done. James Gladstone, who last I checked was a 34-year-old general manager, is not afraid to be aggressive. He traded up for Travis Hunter. So Shayne, what are your thoughts on the Steelers? I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here because we are going to talk about the trade a little bit later, but on the fact that they missed out, if you will, on the Jakobi Meyers trade.
So I'll start with the angle for the Jaguars because I think it's important to talk about them doing what they did. I think it makes a ton of sense to get a player like this because, one, your best receiver, theoretically, at least the guy that you want to be your best receiver in Brian Thomas Jr., has not been the same player he was as a rookie. A lot of that is quarterback play, but a lot of it is also him just not playing quite as well this year as he did as a rookie. Travis Hunter's going to miss some time. Sounds like not too much time, but regardless, you need more depth at that position if he's going to be out. And again, kind of a thing that people aren't talking a lot about, but Brenton Strange being out for them for a while has really hurt them. And obviously Myers is a receiver, not a tight end, but I think he wins in a lot of the same areas that Strange did for them, right? So I think it makes a ton of sense schematically. Liam Cohen knows how to use a player like this. I think to some extent Chris Godwin and him have a similar skill set at this point. So I think he could probably use him in that way. For the Steelers, if it was going to be 2 day 3 picks, especially one of those day 3 picks being a 4th rounder, I am more than comfortable them not making this deal. And I think we'll talk, like I said, more specifically about that later. But that is rich enough for me to say no, especially with them probably not re-signing him if they were to bring him on.
Yeah, Shane. And the other one here is Rashid Shaheed, maybe less popular for whatever reason than Jakobi Meyers, just around the Steelers fan base. Yeah. Really good player to his credit. I mean, has a very good trick. He can go deep. He can win down the field. Very important. There's not that many guys that can do that at an elite level in the NFL. That one was even richer. I mean, you're talking a 4th and a 5th round pick for a guy who, again, has an expiring contract after this year. Maybe it's a half-year rental for Seattle. Maybe they end up signing him to an extension, pair him long-term with JSN there in Seattle. But it's not nothing. And we'll talk about that later with the draft compensation. So those are the 2 guys that most Steelers fans, if they are disgruntled right now, they're mostly upset of missing out on those. There was not a lot of activity around the NFL if you weren't a New York Jets fan.
Yeah, if you weren't a Jets fan, it was pretty boring. Yeah,
exactly. So pretty chalk overall, except for that. That was the Jet stuff was pretty wild.
Cowboys too, man.
You don't often see that. So
good. And
it's funny, Shane, because we look at these teams. We always look at, all right, here's the teams that are 1-7, 1-7, 1-7, 2-6, 2-6. I'm like, all these teams are in the running to sell, but we don't see them actually follow through with it the way that the Jets just did. And so kudos to them. Jets fans will have a couple of fun drafts here coming up, if nothing else. If they lose out, they'll have a couple of fun drafts.
For sure.
All right. You're tuned into the Still Curtain podcast, where Steelers fans come to talk, celebrate, and debate. For more coverage, hit up stillcurtain.com, powered by passionate fans at Fansided. All right, Shane, let's talk about Steelers versus Colts and our biggest notes and takeaways from week 9 before we get into our big Steelers trade deadline discussion here. Let's start with the offense. Aaron Rodgers, 5.8 yards an attempt, sacked 3 times, a 60 QBR, which is respectable, 95 passer rating in this game. The yards per attempt has always been my big concern. It's more specifically the ADOT, the average depth of target. It's very poor.
Yeah.
It's very, very poor. So if you're going to have a bad average depth of target, you need to do a lot after the catch. The problem is a lot of these routes are designed to go to the sidelines or to the flats. There's not a lot of opportunity to create yards after the catch. The biggest plays we've seen this year, Shane, what are they? Slants, posts, drags, any route that gets the ball over the middle of the field to Calvin Austin, to DK Metcalf, with the ability to operate after the catch. And when you do that, I can live with the low ADOT. When you're not doing that, I really struggle with the philosophy of not maximizing plays after the catch, because this was a perfect example of one of those games where they couldn't get much going after the catch. And it was a little bit of a concern for sure. Yes, the Colts are a good team. I think they've got a pretty solid defense overall. 5.8 yards an attempt is never what you want to see. That's Kenny Pickett level stuff.
Right. And I think this is probably the most egregious example of this style of offense being deployed by the Steelers this year. I think that for the most part, Rodgers has found ways to create some explosives, whether it's with the run after catch or a couple big throws down the field, but just didn't really get a lot of that this game. I mean, the first play of the game, Johnny Smith should have had a big explosive play, but drops the ball, which a whole other thing. But in general, they haven't really done a great job of creating explosives this year overall. And in this game, it really kind of came back to bite them for the most part. And when DK Metcalf has 6 yards, you're probably not having a productive day on offense for this team.
Yeah, Shane, I don't even necessarily know if this was an Aaron Rodgers problem. I think that he was kind of just trying to execute the game plan that was in front of him.
He was fine.
So unfortunately, the game plan against the Colts And again, what do we know about the Steelers when they get a lead, especially a multi-score lead? You really take your foot off the gas for sure. And
but they don't live in their fears, Tommy. We're not afraid to lose.
They don't live in their fears.
Yeah, anyway,
so I do think the game plan played a factor into the conservative play calling, if you will, on offense, and so that might be the reason for that. The rushing game, Shayne, here. It's bad as it gets.
Yeah.
As bad as it gets. And I was hoping that they would have a little bit more success. I know that the Colts have done a good job overall this season, but 1.9 yards per carry for Jaylen Warren, 31 yards on 16 carries. As a team, they rushed for 1.7 yards a carry. There was no running lanes at all. There was nothing to get going here. Caleb Johnson got 1 carry in this game for 4 yards. He was efficient as anybody else in this game on a very small sample. You don't want to see another rushing performance this bad the rest of the way.
No, this was a weird one where it felt like there was a couple of nice runs from Jaylen. It felt like, but he just couldn't quite get all the way through the hole fast enough for something would close up right whenever I thought he was about to burst through. Like, it felt like the run blocking was certainly subpar, but it also was kind of unlucky that they didn't get a couple more nice runs out of it. And honestly, both these run defenses came to play this week. Like, I think this is one of those games where the trench play was kind of bad for both teams on the offensive side of the ball, and the defensive side really dominated the trench play in general.
Yeah. Yeah, and to add a little bit more context here, on the Steelers' 23 carries they had in this game, there were a handful of goal line carries, which obviously it brings your
that negative 8-yard carry by Kenneth Gainwell.
Oh yeah, I mean that doesn't help.
That really torched
Gainwell in this game, 3 carries for -1 yard, and so again he was hit before he ever stood a chance.
Yeah, that was not his fault. Admittedly, as much as I will blame Kenneth Gainwell for some stuff, that was not his fault.
Yeah, credit to the interior defensive line of the Colts, who did a really good job shedding blocks and making plays in this game. Steelers' offensive line needs to be better in that regard. I'm not concerned about it because they had several good games run blocking in a row. This was a setback, but not something that they can't overcome. I would expect them fully to be 2 or 3 times better pretty easily on Sunday Night Football than they were just now. Let's talk about the wide receivers here, Shayne, because it's another interesting game like this. We've had several of these lately, but if you go look top down, Steelers receivers, leading receivers in this game, Calvin Austin with 56 yards. And then it was Darnell Washington, the 300-pound tight end.
Heck yeah.
Kenneth Gainwell with 35, Pat Freiermuth with 27, Jonnu Smith with 25, Caleb Johnson with 9.
Yeah, that 9-yard catch.
6 yards.
Yeah,
on 4 targets in this game. Then Roman Wilson had a catch, which he obviously fumbled with and is going to be quickly in Mike Tomlin's doghouse because of that. And then Jaylen Warren had -2 yards on his 2 receptions in this game. Just it's really weird sometimes when you look at the box score after the game and see, okay, how is this even possible to have DK Metcalf as your 7th leading receiver?
And that's part of the problem is the fact that with a player like DK, it is totally possible for this to happen to you, because if he doesn't get the right kind of targets and in the right situations, sometimes he just kind of doesn't show up. And I don't know if that's necessarily, I don't know if I want to say it's his fault overall, but it's just kind of part of the problem with someone like him who does have a relatively narrow skill set, being your wide receiver 1, right? Like, this is not at least in my opinion, a high volume target receiver, right? Like, it's not somebody you want to pepper with targets all the time, because he just doesn't win consistently as a route runner and as a separator a lot of the time. And it's okay, because when you do get him going, he's very hard to stop, but you do have to have other ways to move the football. Calvin Austin had a nice day, but again, is he the receiver 2 for this team right now? Yes. Would love Roman Wilson to get more involved, but as you kind of mentioned, I don't know if that's going to happen even without the trades, because he fumbled and therefore he's bad. That's kind of what this team feels like sometimes with guys like him. But again, like, when Caleb Johnson has more receiving yards than DK Metcalf, that's not great. And I would have said that if Caleb Johnson had the role I thought he was going to have this season, which was something and not nothing. So that's just kind of where we're at with the receivers right now. It's very hit or miss.
Yeah, and let's be honest, Shayne, you spend a 2nd-round pick and $30 million per season to go out and get DK Metcalf. You cannot justify him getting 6 receiving yards.
You can't. No.
I'm telling you, if you recognize where he wins,
Yeah.
how is this guy not getting like 4 to 5 quick slants every single game? Like he can box you out and he can run after the catch. Those are his defining traits. And it seems like when the Steelers have gone to those quick slants this season, I mean, they're good for a minimum of 7 yards. It's usually like in the 7 to 10 yard range. And sometimes
you drive that way
much longer. You get him going across the field. I mean, we saw that 81-yard reception or 80-yard reception he had early in the season. Like, can you get the guy in space? Like, we got to find a way to get him involved if you're a good offensive mind. And I think that obviously Arthur Smith is far better than any Steelers offensive coordinator they've had in the last 6 years or so. But you got to find ways to get your most explosive weapon involved. And the Steelers have done a very poor job of that at times this season. This was an example of that. And it's why their offense struggled. The defense in the takeaways, we already said, won this game. It wasn't the offense. And it certainly didn't help that DK had no impact in this game. You got to find ways to get him involved. All right, Shayne, the offensive line. We talked about the run blocking already. Needs to improve. It was not a very good game as run block. Pass protection, I went back and watched tape. Broderick Jones, he's such a roller coaster. Just when I think I'm getting optimistic about him, it's like, okay, your technique's as sloppy as ever.
Yeah.
But I want to highlight Troy Fautanu for a second.
Absolutely.
I think had the game of his career. Yeah. If you go back and watch the All-22, he is firing off of his stance. The technique is really good. Snatch trap, like he's knocking you down. He's laying on top of you, grabbing those wrists. Like, it is teach tape type of stuff. He never once did he come close to giving up a pressure. At most, he'd give a little bit of ground and he'd quickly re-anchor, and that was it. And that's the worst thing that you can say about him in his game against the Colts. 0 pressures allowed, 0 sacks allowed on 39 pass block reps. And it was a beautiful thing to watch, Shayne.
Yeah, this is what I kind of anticipated with him when he came out in the draft and why I was really excited about him getting to us where he did. This is the type of player at tackle that in an ideal world where he's playing at his best, you pretty much know that if he gets a one-on-one, he's probably winning it. Like, if he has to deal with a pass rusher one-on-one, he's probably going to win. Not many tackles can say that. He is one because of his technique and the explosiveness in his movement, his ability to mirror guys because he is very fluid on his feet. He's just somebody that gives a lot of guys problems if he's playing well. And right now, the last few weeks especially, we're starting to see him become that player that I think if he would have had a healthy rookie season, we probably would have already seen him reach this level at some point. But now that he has gotten a chance to play enough, I think it's finally coming to fruition here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling very optimistic about him. I mean, the footwork, the athletic traits just pop on film. To me, it's more about the anchoring strength. Can you get stronger as your career goes on?
May never be a
Some
super
guys
big
will always
strength
have some limitations in that facet of their game, but I mean, this was. I don't want to give the praise like too high here. He still has a lot to prove, but it was a very like Rashawn Slatery type game from Fautanu, where it's like you're doing everything technically the way that you should. Your kick slide is amazing. I mean, there's no complaints from Fautanu in this game at all. I thought it was an excellent performance. I want to back up 1 second here, Shayne, and talk about, you could call him an offensive lineman, but let's talk about Darnell for a second here, because if he had caught one of those 2 end zone targets, then he should have. I mean,
he should have caught one of them. Yeah.
One of them, he should have known that he had the chance to see the ball coming his way. Kind of got his head turned around a little bit late. Ball hit him right between the numbers and bounced off his chest. The other one would have been a tougher catch. It was kind of an extension. I think that he gets it if Rodgers doesn't put it quite so far out in front of him, because the defensive back actually was in better position to make the play forward rather than you put it on his body. Not going to fault Rodgers for that. Washington has to come down with one of those 2 receptions. Having said that, I thought the rest of his game was beautiful. I really do. Like, his adjustment that he made on that kind of corner route that he ran from the slot there. I mean, I don't know if there's a player like him. And I know there's not. There's not a player like him in the NFL that's 6'7" with a 7'1" wingspan that weighs 315 pounds, whatever he is these days, that has the soft hands, the body control, the way that he does. And the fact that even with those 2 drops, you can call him in this game, finished for 4 catches for 43 yards and was the second leading receiver on the team. Like, I'm just so impressed with this guy when you watch him play. And obviously the blocking is the best part of his game. He's still a bit lumbering in his movements, which is to be expected for a guy that big, but he can be pretty smooth when the ball is in the air. And I thought it was a pretty encouraging game overall.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this dude just rocks. Like he does. Like it's really the best way to describe him. Like he's so unique in the way that he wins and the way that he plays that it's kind of like. So I think some people might be like, "Oh, how good is Darnell Washington really?" And to be fair, I think he's as good as the Steelers allow him to be in terms of how they use him as a blocker, as a weapon, and how they get him involved in the passing game. But it's just nice to see them trying to do it for once, because like I feel like this could have been a part of their offense really from the get-go with him, especially because he probably would have been a little bit more athletic 2 years ago when he wasn't 300 pounds, most likely, right? So like in general, I really am glad that they're getting him involved most weeks and finding a way to do that, because he's clearly the best overall weapon at tight end they have, whether you consider that as a receiver and a blocker or whatever. His package of skills is the best thing they have going for them at that position right now.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and for what it's worth, he graded out as the best, earned a top grade among all Steelers offensive players in week 9 against the Colts with a 75.1 grade per Pro Football Focus. All right, Shayne, let's move to the defensive side of the ball really quickly here. Defensive front, very strong performance.
Yes.
I mean, TJ Watt looked like TJ Watt. You find out what happens when you don't chip or double TJ Watt. You can't, he's going to get one of those plays.
He still can do that for sure.
Rips around you. I mean, he's that rip move and then the swat with the left hand. I mean, how many times have we seen that throughout his career? It resulted in a strip sack that he caused and a forced fumble that he recovered. And so that was one of the huge plays the Steelers made in this game. Alex Highsmith doing the same on the opposite side from the blind side over there. Strip sack on Daniel Jones. Steelers recover the football. Derek Harmon that time with the recovery. Collectively, just strong. I mean, and then the interior defensive line, same thing. Cameron Hayward's tossing guys to the side. I mean, he looks like the youthful version of himself. He's playing some of his best football still. Derek Harmon had a couple of really nice rushes in this game. Keanu Benton, that club move is lethal at times.
Oh, yeah.
When you get a good
when he hits that one,
he can just club you right off to the side.
Yeah,
and you go watch the all 22 on him. I'm very encouraged by what I've seen with Keanu Benton over the past 2 or 3 weeks here too. So really strong performance by the defensive front collectively.
Yeah, the defensive front is definitely the story of this game in terms of their overall impact on the game. And frankly, we're going to get into a little bit more in a second here, but I think this game shows that when the Steelers are able to play coverage well enough to allow the pass rushers to actually rush the passer for, let's say, over 2.5 seconds. Let's say you just give them that much time or more. This is what can still happen with this team. I think they haven't necessarily lost their fastball being the pass rush. They're just less effective because I don't care how good you are as a pass rusher. If the other team get the ball out in 2.5 seconds, you're not going to win most of the time, right? Just not going to happen. So that was huge for this defense to be able to allow them to actually hunt after Daniel Jones and force him into a lot of mistakes that he made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just as big of a storyline as how impressive the pass rush was, Shayne, how impressive you were against Jonathan Taylor, the league's top running back this year, who has multiple games of 100+ yards and 3 touchdowns in a game. And so the fact that you were able to hold him completely in check in this contest was a testament to how well the defensive line played also.
Absolutely. And also got to shout out Alex Highsmith, vintage performance by him in terms of how he typically can do the TJ Watt impression with the strip sacks and winning around the edge the way he did. Like he is still a really good player. And I understand some people are, including myself, would like to see more Nick Herbig. And to be fair, like it's hard to say that when Alex Highsmith has the game he had against the Colts. But at the end of the day, having all these guys is awesome. And Herbig did play 40 snaps, so he is getting closer to the amount of snaps I'd like him to play. But in general, those 3 and really kind of the entire pass rush was really dominant all day.
Yeah, and for Highsmith is a great way to kind of silence doubters a little bit and make him know that, all right, this is it was a healthy rotation. I'd like to see, I know TJ Watt had 61 snaps in this game. Go down a little bit. Go down.
If he gets over 50, man, we're probably doing the wrong thing. Just saying.
I mean,
that's where we're at.
He's like I said, we said 2 weeks ago. I need to check the updated numbers, but I'm sure it hasn't changed. He's on track to earn the most snaps in in his career so far, and he's 31 years old. You should be going the opposite direction, keeping him fresh, keeping him healthy. And obviously, if you make the postseason, it's far more important to have a fresh TJ Watt than it is to try to pat your stats or whatever for an extra handful of snaps per game during the regular season. Like, just keep the guy fresh, and you can do that. You've got the resources to do it. Even Jack Sawyer, to his credit, had a couple pressures in this game and made a couple of nice plays. Like, he's not incapable of seeing the field for his 20 to 25 snaps a game too. So keep deploying that healthy rotation. I thought this week was a much better blend than what we've seen in the past several weeks before that. So that was encouraging, at least. Shayne, I've got to talk about linebacker Peyton Wilson, who I think had phenomenal back-to-back games now. It was one of the lone bright spots against the Green Bay Packers, and now against the Colts in week 9. I mean, he was all over the field. Obviously, he had the interception where he kind of went off of his guy because he read Daniel Jones's eyes, and heads up play by him. But I mean, the run blitzing, the run fits, the sideline ability, you're seeing it all from him now. And he's playing his best football. I think these last 2 games, you could argue that he's playing like a Pro Bowl type linebacker.
Absolutely. The last 2 games in particular have been really phenomenal for him. And again, at the end of the day with him, it was always coming. And I think the start of the season kind of had people worried, even myself to a certain degree, because young linebackers, they tend to struggle. It's kind of the thing that they do. That's why it's kind of hard to value that position sometimes, because usually you look around the league and you're like, oh, the best, like most consistent linebackers, they're all like 29 years old. It's like, all right, well, it's because they have to play for a while to get used to the NFL game. But he is starting to turn it back on after a really strong rookie season. And if he keeps playing this way, I think linebacker, despite my issues with Patrick Queen, will at least be a pretty good position for the Steelers.
All right, Shayne, let's move into the secondary now, who desperately needed a bounce back game. Unfortunately, they still allowed a 300-yard performance, 342 yards to be exact. But it took Daniel Jones 50 passes to get there. Averaged 6.8 yards in attempt. They picked the ball off 3 times. Obviously, one of those was Peyton Wilson. Who was the other one? No, the other one was Jack Sawyer.
Yeah, Jack Sawyer on the batted pass from Peyton Wilson.
Yes, and then Joey Porter had a legitimate interception, and credit to him. That's one that he drops a lot, but
he usually does.
Yeah. I mean, great game by Porter overall. I still have my concerns about the secondary, as I'm sure you still do too, Shayne, but it's the bounce back performance that they needed in week 9 after really struggling against the Bengals and Packers in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, I think the 2 changes, obviously, that we need to talk about when it comes to the secondary is Jalen Ramsey playing free safety out of necessity, but now seemingly because he should be, which I think at this point you can make the strong argument. And also the change to a little bit more too high safety coverages, right? I think especially against teams that have a veteran quarterback or an offensive coordinator that knows how to attack the Steelers, single high safety defense, which is just not hard for them to do at this point. Running more, cover 2, cover 4, things that allow 2 safeties to be back there and have more guys in coverage in general, so you don't blitz as much, I think it has to be the move against these veteran quarterbacks. It just has to. You saw what it did to Daniel Jones. It made him have to read the field a split second longer than guys like Jordan Love and Joe Flacco had to do. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is like this great processor or anything like that, but he is a veteran quarterback, and he's looked very good at processing what he's seeing this year. So I do want to give the Steelers credit for disrupting what they've been doing with the Colts, and it needs to continue, in my opinion.
Yeah, Shayne, on Jalen Ramsey, it's interesting because if you would have told me before, like halfway through the season, he's going to be declared a free safety, essentially, I would have been like, all right, what's the point of making this trade then? Because you've got a guy that's at least proven and has been an all-pro at the safety position. Obviously Ramsey's played everywhere in the secondary, but it wouldn't have been my preference to leave him there. I think he did a really good job because at this stage of his career, I mean, he just knows the game so well. He can see the play coming. He can read the field. Like, I think there are definitely some advantages of keeping him there. I think that's going to largely depend on the cornerback play, though. Like, you've got to get respectable play. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a benching coming here soon, but so far so good. I mean, that experiment is so far it looks like it's working out. Kyle Duggar as well had a pretty good game, being just thrown right into the mix there.
He wasn't a problem. And when you play most of the snaps like several days after being traded somewhere, and you aren't the problem, I can live with
And
that.
that's the best way to describe it. Wasn't a problem in this game. You didn't hear his name much, and that's what you want from a safety. You don't want to see it like Juan Thornhill the previous week, like blowing huge plays down the field.
Yeah.
So let's move on. We're gonna breeze past special teams. We got
we had the muff punt, but that's the Colts messing that up with Josh Downs. Is not really much of the Steelers doing. And that cool little kick thing that they did because of the penalty that they kicked it out of bounds and only had to go to the 25.
Oh yeah,
that was
we
cool
probably
too.
should talk about that real quick. I know Shayne's got a doctor's appointment here, but that Danny Smith rigging the system like that is so it's a brilliant move.
Yeah,
you got the penalty, you got your 15 yards, kick the ball out of bounds, and then you're already in an advantageous situation. It's one that's going to make the NFL go back and rethink that rule. And
they might need to adjust it. I mean, it's not super often you get a 15-yard penalty on the kickoff. No. So like it probably doesn't matter that much, but I do think it's funny that he was like, oh, I can pull this out right now. He did.
Yeah. So. Yes. And what a perfect time for it. All right. If you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. Also, be sure to check out our written work on steelcurtain.com. Yesterday, we hammered out over 20 articles on the NFL trade deadline. Make sure you're over there with our written content. We appreciate all of your support. All right, Shayne, let's talk about the Steelers standing pat at the NFL trade deadline. You could even say that they were sleepwalking through it. They did their homework, at least. They reached out. We know that they had discussions because of the report from Tiana Rossini from The Athletic that they were in discussions with the Raiders for a trade for Jacoby Myers. There were rumors that they were in discussions with the New Orleans Saints for Rashid Shaheed as well. So a receiver was at least on their radar. It was something that they were mapping out. I'm okay with this. I truly am okay with the fact that they stood pat at the deadline, that they did not mortgage a few day 3 picks for a half-year rental of a wide receiver. I know you're trying to maximize in this window, but 2 questions I would ask Shayne is, first of all, what is the difference between a Jacoby Myers and a Calvin Austin or a Jacoby Myers and a Roman Wilson right now? And perhaps it's significant. I will point out Myers has not had more than 39 yards in over a month for the Raiders prior to being traded. I think he's a good player. I think he's an upgrade largely because he's got good size and he's of his veteran presence. He can play the slot, can play outside. But is it enough of an upgrade that you should mortgage a 4th plus? We're talking a 4th and a 6th round pick, or for the Steelers to get the deal done, 4th and a 5th round pick is probably what you're looking at. Would that have been worth it? And my answer to that, Shayne, is no. I look at what this team has done, and we'll get there in a second, but I would not have been willing to give up that much. I think they made the right move not topping these offers for either Myers or Shaheed.
I think they made the right decision too, and I think there's a specific reason as to why that is. When you look at who traded for these players, the Jacoby Myers deal for the Jaguars, they are a team that is in playoff contention in a first year with a new head coach, and they're trying to at least show that they're competitive, to show that they can make this thing work with this core that they've kind of put together quickly under the new coach and GM. They have a reason to want to go for it, to want to make the playoffs, even if they probably aren't going to compete in those playoffs realistically. They are striving for something that they haven't done in a while now, right? The Seahawks are trying to catch fire with a player that they're familiar with because the offensive coordinator coached him last year in in New Orleans. It's a fit that makes a ton of sense. It's something that they can afford to do because they don't have a ton of holes roster-wise right now, as proven by their 6-2 start. And again, they're hot right now. Like, they have a chance to win this division and to maybe go far in the playoffs if Sam Darnold can continue to show that he is now a true superstar level quarterback. Pittsburgh doesn't have any of those qualifications. They are not a team that I think is going to be super competitive in the playoffs. They are not a team that needs to prove to themselves they can make the playoffs. We know this team can make the playoffs. They can't win in the playoffs. And I just don't know if Jacoby Myers is going to win them a playoff game versus a Roman Wilson or a Calvin Austin. And the same thing with Rashid Shaheed. Is he going to be a valuable player on an offense that can't push the ball down the field anyway? I think that they made, again, just using that as my reference point, the right decision not to give up draft capital that could be used to help them in the future here.
Yeah, Shayne, there were 2 guys traded at the deadline that could swing a game or so.
Yeah.
Potentially. There were 2 needle-moving trades, but they were from the New York Jets, the ones we talked about already, Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. They were not Jacoby Myers and Rashid Shaheed.
No.
I think they play a very important position, and wide receiver 2 is an important position in the NFL.
Yes.
But I don't think that the difference that you're getting in terms of production is going to swing a game, barring something like some monstrous performance. Is there even room for that in Steelers offense? I mean, we just
that's the other question.
Get 6 yards, Shayne.
Yeah.
We're coming. Yeah. I mean, honestly, we're coming off a game. So let's fix the in-house problem first before we start trying to fix it with something out of house. Metcalf just had 6 yards on 4 targets and didn't have anything real apart from one play. I think he had one route that went over the middle of the field. You got to get your massive investment involved before we can even start talking about mortgaging draft capital to try to fix receivers down the line. Like, let's get that in shape first. And secondly, Shayne, I don't think that the receivers are as big of an issue as people are making them out to be. I mean, you go back to the Packers game last week, Roman Wilson was good. I mean, he was actually good in that game. He had 74 yards and a touchdown. When the play broke down, he did a beautiful job readjusting coming back to the ball, working back to Aaron Rodgers to give him a window to throw. He made some really nice plays. He made some nice plays after the catch. He had the touchdown catch that he held on long enough, at least for it to be ruled a touchdown. Yeah. This week on his lone target came with 3 minutes and 42 seconds left in the game. He tried to hurdle a guy. Shouldn't have done that. It was a bad mistake. You coughed up the ball. You should have not been reckless in that situation. I know what he was trying to do. He's trying to make a play because it was his one chance to touch the football in this game, and he was trying to make the most of that opportunity. He'll learn from that mistake, just like Caleb Johnson, unfortunately, had to learn from his mistake the hard way and didn't even see the field the next game. We'll see how Tomlin handles the Roman Wilson situation.
We'll see.
But I think there's something to work with there. And Calvin Austin has proven that there is something to work with there. He's a pretty natural receiver, and he's got juice after the catch. He's just tiny. And that's he's going to have limitations because the dude is 5'7" 3/4. But to me, the upgrade that I'm getting going from Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin to one of those receivers for a half-year rental was not a big enough upgrade for me to make that move to get a trade done successfully.
No, it's not. And you look at Calvin Austin, like he's been banged up, but like when he's played, has he been quite as effective as Jacoby Myers this year overall? No. But is it a difference of, multiple day 3 picks for 1/2 of a year rental? No, it just isn't. I think that you should make it work with him. And more specifically, you should make it work with Roman Wilson, because what was he kind of billed as to be coming out of the draft? A guy that can work in the slot primarily, who has deep threat ability, who can separate quickly, who can get you, first, second, third down chunks that you don't have to be behind the sticks all the time. Make that work. It proves to me that works for you, because we've seen him do it. You've had enough breakdowns on your Twitter about times where he's clearly open and the ball's just not coming his way for one reason or another. Make that work before you try to bring in someone mid-season and then implement them into this offense. So they definitely made the right call there, in my opinion.
Now, Shayne, the next point that I want to get to is it's just a 4th-round pick, right? Yeah. It's just a 4th-round pick. That's what we've heard from everybody so far. And again, for most teams, most situations, you're right. I mean, if you think that you're in a Super Bowl window,
which they're not,
by all means, get your 4th-round pick. We know better. Ditch your 4th-round pick in for a chance to win now. That's fine.
Yeah.
But the narrative that the Steelers have been like this horribly bad drafting team in the 4th round, simply infactual. In fact, there is a high-profile media personality with a popular Steelers radio network that put a list of all the 4th-round picks the Steelers have drafted for whatever reason, going back to like the very early Kevin Colbert days. And I mean, that's kind of just to
disingenuous
narrative, I think.
That's
in recent years, Shayne. I'm gonna fire off the last 4 first-round picks. 3 of these were with the new regime, the new front office of Omar Khan-Waddle. 1 was just before that.
Yeah.
But the Steelers' last 4 4th-round picks were Calvin Austin, who's now Steelers wide receiver 2 and in playing very efficient when he does get targeted.
Yep.
Nick Herbig.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Nick friggin' Herbig, who is the 5th graded edge rusher in the NFL from Pro Football Focus right now. And by the way, Herbig is 23 years old. Still.
Yeah.
I can say that for a few more weeks. He's 23 years old still in his 3rd NFL season. Mason McCormick, who was a starting right guard for the Steelers.
Good one too.
Darn near 100 percentile athlete testing wise, coming out of college, prototype traits for the position. He's strong and he looks like he could be potentially one of those 8 to 10 year starters at the position. And then this year, Jack Sawyer, who has the highest splash play rate of any rookie defender in the NFL. Now, again, jury's still out on Sawyer. Maybe he'll end up being just a rotational piece in the NFL, and that's fine. That's what you can expect from a 4th round pick, but so far, so good. The Steelers are batting 1,000 right now with their 4th round picks in the new regime. You go back before that, Shayne, in just the 2 years, I think before that, you had Dan Moore in 2021.
Say what you want about him. He started for, exactly.
And again,
started for years for us.
Complain about Dan Moore all day long. If you don't like him as a starting left tackle, it's a 4th round. He's as good as you can expect to get from a 4th round pick.
Yeah.
He truly is.
Yeah.
And then before that, you had Kevin Dotson, who after the Steelers
should have been good for us, but whatever,
ended up being an all-pro level guard for the LA Rams. Like so there was 2 misses in their last 8 picks. And I believe that was Buddy Johnson and Anthony McFarland, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
So you're 6 of 8 with those 4th round picks. And that's not counting the 5th round pick and the 6th round pick the Steelers would have had to give up to execute a trade for Rashid Shaheed or for Jacoby Myers. I say all this to make a point that the narrative that these 4th round picks doesn't matter simply is not true. Right now, on this very roster, Steelers have a 4th round starting guard. They have a 4th round edge rusher who is the best rotational edge rusher in the NFL for my money and should be a starting edge rusher because he's that good. They've got one of the fastest receivers in the NFL who's playing efficiently, and they've got another rotational depth piece and edge rusher at a very important position. Like you shouldn't throw these picks away because the Steelers have been good with them.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people misunderstand about the NFL draft is like so much emphasis is put on the first 2 days of the NFL draft, and for good reason. The vast majority of the best players in the NFL do come from that range because they're obviously typically the most talented. They have the most, energy put into them by the organization. They put the most time and effort to make them good, and that's just how it works. But 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th undrafted, like that's still where you find a lot of your depth at worst. And some guys do break out into being stars. Nick Herbig certainly qualifies as that, right? Like at this point, I think it's hard to say he hasn't. It's just that happens sometimes. And you don't want to be just throwing them away for chances at players who might be able to help you down the stretch of one season. Because 4 years of cost control, like think about how much surplus value Nick Herbig currently is giving this roster on a defense that is the most expensive in the league, by the way. And if you were paying him what he should be getting paid in terms of his value, this would be the highest paid defense by like a factor of 2. Like that's kind of what having that kind of contract and that player, why it's so valuable and why draft capital is so valuable.
And Shayne, a guy like Nick Herbig, after you draft him and he plays for pennies, I mean, a few $100,000 is what he's
pretty much
for, compared to these other edge rushers in the league that are getting, say with Micah, $46.5 million, TJ Watt, $41 million. Like the difference in price makes him he's invaluable. Like
immeasurably valuable from a play perspective.
And not only that, but you can never get a guy like Nick Herbig in free agency because Steelers are either going to lock him up to a contract or they would trade him. Like you're not going to get a 25-year-old pass rusher in the prime of his career unless you bid like Guru bucks in free agency to kind of get that guy. So you are getting a huge advantage. And what we say about the draft, Shayne, as many throws as you can get at the dartboard, that's what you should do. You take a handful of darts, you throw them, you're going to get a bullseye. Like
I hope so. Yeah.
And that's what the Steelers have gotten with their last four fourth round picks. I think they got one bullseye there. It's Nick Herbig, and they got another couple big hit pointers.
Yeah,
there
15,
with Mason
16.
McCormick. Yeah. I mean, I really love their picks. I really have zero complaints about their 4th-round picks. So people that are going and using that as the narrative, I would urge you to go back and look at what they've done with those selections. So essentially, Shayne, just to break this down again, you could have had Jacoby Myers for half a year or Rashid Shaheed for half a year, or you could potentially have a Nick Herbig for his career. You could potentially have Mason McCormick for 6-7 years as a starting offensive guard. Like, you got to put it into perspective on how the Steelers have been drafting. Even Calvin Austin, you can have Calvin Austin for 2 contracts, or you can have half a year of Jacoby Myers. It's like, when you look at it that way and consider how this team has been drafting, I'll take the pick. Like, give me the pick. And again, I don't think these are guys that are big enough needle movers that you should be trading picks away, unless you truly are that team that's like, this can get me over the hump. I don't think that's the case for the Steelers. Feel free to disagree with us if you would. Any other thoughts on that, Shayne?
No, I think that's, again, pretty clearly why this was the right move for them to sit on their hands and say, we're not going to give up that much capital for these guys.
All right, Shayne, let's fire off a few names who were the biggest winners from the Steelers after the NFL trade deadline. I can certainly think of a few: Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, who we just talked about. They do not have to worry about getting bumped down a slot in the pecking order at wide receiver because of a wide receiver trade. Also, I would look at defensive back too.
Yeah.
Even a guy as established as Darius Slay, where it's like, your job very well could have been on the line. Had Steelers gone out and gotten Alontae Taylor, if they went out and got anybody, a guy that I wrote about was Eric Stokes. I mean, a guy that I think is having a bit of a bounce back year now that he's on the Raiders. You go out and get somebody that you think is an upgrade, you're back to the bench. And so I would put him in there. Shayne, is there any other names that you would say we're going to kind of breathe a sigh of relief now that the trade deadline is over?
I think someone like, if he wants to be here, which I imagine he does, even with the way the season has gone, Pat Freiermuth sticking around. Like, if he wants to be here, I'm sure he's kind of happy that they didn't decide to make a move there. Again, you kind of touched on it, that, like, as far as who was potentially in the crosshairs of losing their job or being demoted to some degree, it's really the receivers outside of DK Metcalf, and then obviously the secondary, mostly Darius Slay, who I would assume is who gets knocked down if they made a trade there. So those are kind of the guys that I would focus on there.
Yeah, I think so. And you mentioned Freiermuth. I want to speak on him for a second. I did write about him a couple times here because we saw a major catastrophic tight end injury in the NFL last week when Tucker Kraft went down.
One of the best fantasy team,
ascending, mine too. One of the most ascending tight ends in the NFL. There was a window there. I mean, if they wanted to get something done, there were teams, I'm sure, that would have been interested in adding a player like Freiermuth. Obviously, the Steelers weren't going to be sellers. We knew that based on Mike Tomlin's comments.
For sure.
He said, we are buyers at the deadline. He made that very, very clear. So that was never too much in question, but I'm sure there would have been some suitors had they gone that route.
Yeah.
All right. From the highs, the heartbreaks, in every headline, this is the Steel Curtain Podcast, your source to Steelers talk, powered by SteelCurtain.com and the fan voices at Fansided. Shayne, let's get to the Steelers versus Chargers Week 10 matchup on Sunday Night Football. Get another primetime matchup here. Their last 2 primetime matchups did not go so well. I would assume that with all eyes watching in a big game, now that we're ending the second half of the season, they want this matchup to go better than their last 2 primetime matchups. I don't think that's a bold take by any stretch of the imagination. Let's talk about some of the biggest storylines here, Shayne, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I want to start with the Chargers missing their bookend tackles. And when I looked at this matchup, like way back when it was on the schedule, I'm like, okay, this could be tough. I mean, you might not get any pass rush in this game. Man, all of a sudden it's like Steelers are coming off a game where they just destroyed Braden Smith. They destroyed the offensive line of the Indianapolis Colts. And so with this game, I mean, and the next note I have on here is Trevor Penning. They traded for Trevor Penning from the Saints. Going to be thrown into the mix all at once at tackle here. I think that this is a matchup that certainly favors the Steelers.
Yeah, this is really tough for the Chargers, and I was really high on this team coming into the year. I felt like, Herbert was ready to kind of go back to being more of the focal point of the offense. Greg Roman showed me enough last year that I was like, okay, I think he can build out a good enough passing game. And they just came out the gate swinging right away, and they looked really good. And of course, it all falls apart in terms of the roster, as it always does for this team. I do not know what in the world's going on with that. I hope for the best for them, frankly. I cannot continue to watch the Chargers just die halfway through the season every year. But that's what happened, right? And now they're facing a Steelers team that's coming off of a huge win, whose pass rush is playing very well, even whenever they haven't gotten home. It's just been more the secondary. If they can hold up against this Chargers passing attack, which even with the issues on the offensive line, Herbert has been able to make a lot of plays. If they can just make him hold the ball a little bit, it could get very ugly as far as the pass blocking department for the Chargers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, you feel for Chargers fans too, because you think you got that tackle situation figured out. And then you watch Joe Alt get carted off the field again. And
Slater missed the season from the start.
Yeah, I mean, it's just rough stuff they've got going. It's going to be an encouraging outlook overall. They're going to have great tackles for a long time.
For sure.
But yeah, definitely some really bad injury luck at the tackle position for the team that might have the best tackle pairing in the NFL, and those two guys are healthy. Small sample so far, but a very encouraging outlook overall. And the biggest storyline here, Shayne, the one that I really wanted to talk about today, is already we can start looking at that AFC tiebreaker outlook and how this is going to look. And so what I mean by that, this game against the Chargers, it could mean a lot by week 17, 18. You get to the end of the season, and we could be looking at two teams that very well finish with the same record. I mean, these might be two 11-win teams or two 10-win teams by the end of the season. Right now, they're pretty on par with each other in that regard. I wouldn't expect the Chargers to win their division with the Broncos playing the way they are, the Chiefs there. It's going to be hard. I mean, there's a chance, obviously, and this game would certainly help. But this game for head-to-head tiebreaker at the end of the year, if it comes down to the Steelers and Chargers are both 10 wins, but the Chargers hold a tiebreaker over the Steelers to get into one of those three wild card spots, that's all she wrote. Head-to-head is what you go by your head-to-head record before anything else.
Yeah.
And so if the Chargers are tied with the Steelers, boom, you just got yourself knocked out of the playoffs. And so even this early in the season, we can look ahead at the major playoff implications that can be had by the end of the season. This is a far more important game than I think a lot of fans realize. Not only that, you don't want your own division to creep back up on you here. Lamar Jackson's back and healthy. They crushed the Miami Dolphins on the road last week, and they have an easy schedule the rest of the way. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they went pretty spotless almost the rest of the way with what they have going on there. So the Steelers have to be good, but I think this is an important game just for the fact that you can at least let go of your breath now, knowing that you have a tiebreaker over this team if all things were to end even at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think this game is important not only for the things you mentioned, but for this team, for me to feel comfortable about this team winning the division at the end of the year, I think they have to get to 11 wins. I think 10 wins was the number I was looking at. You look at the way the Ravens play and the way that they're going to probably play against a lot of these teams they're facing. I would not be shocked if this division comes down to week 18 against the Ravens, right? I really think that that's where this thing could be kind of coming to fruition. And if they have a game up on them, and they beat them the first time potentially, they might be able to still win the division depending on tiebreakers and stuff like that. So having 10 wins or so going into that game, if not 11, is huge. And you look at their upcoming schedule. If they can beat the Chargers, you hope that they can beat the Bengals the second time. Like, if you can't, then you don't deserve to win the division anyway, but whatever. The Bears, who knows? I certainly don't know week to week with that team. You hope you can beat them. But then you got the Bills, the Ravens for the first time. The Dolphins, again, should be a win, but that's the type of game we typically lose. Lions, they have some issues, but they're still the Lions. Get the Browns, and then you finish with the Ravens. Like, if you want 11 wins, you probably got to win this game and the next couple.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment based on what you just outlined there, Shayne. And for what it's worth, the Steelers are 5-3. The Chargers are 6-3 right now. We'll see how this game goes. Biggest matchups to watch here, Shayne. Obviously, since we were on the topic of the offensive tackles a little bit, I mean, this could be a game where the Steelers have a chance to just tee off. You're going against backup tackles, essentially, and a guy that was literally just traded yesterday from the Saints to the Chargers, expected to make the start at left tackle. That's Trevor Penning. I mean, that's one that has to favor the Steelers in this matchup.
They have to win up front. They cannot allow Justin Herbert to have time to find his guys down the field or in the middle of the field. He's been so good this year, despite a lot of the issues with his team. He's had a couple, hiccup moments. He had the pick six, that he threw against the Titans. But again, it happens like to everyone in this league. He, though, has been so phenomenal despite a lot of those issues. And if you can't affect him pretty heavily most snaps, he is a guy that can get outside the pocket or just fire one of those just signature Herbert like laser beams down the middle of the field for a big completion. So got to affect him up front as much as possible.
I agree, Shayne. I look at the Chargers receivers, and they don't really have that one defining player that's like, all right, this is the Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson you have to account for. But they've got a lot of guys that can find the soft spot in the zone, get open, kill you over the middle of the field. And unfortunately, that's been a weakness of the Steelers this year with the safety play, with the linebacker play. How do you see that matchup going for Pittsburgh this week?
It's going to be really tough because, again, like Keenan Allen, who has historically hurt this team every time he plays them, like he's one of those guys that it used to be that they're like, let's just throw a linebacker on Keenan Allen. It's like, what are we like? There's that issue. Yeah. Geez. Rondé Gadsden has been ridiculous for this football team. He scares the crap out of me. I'm not going to lie to you. Jalen Ramsey might have to give him the Tyler Warren treatment that he gave Tyler Warren last week when he was kind of on him on third downs. Like that might have to be the play because that guy is basically a big receiver out there.
He's exploded.
Yeah, so there's so many guys to worry about. Quentin Johnston had a really hot start to the year, and then he kind of faded, but now he had a better game last week. Like, they do have a great complement of weapons, and that's without even talking about Lad McConkey, who is their best player in that receiving room. He just has not been quite as productive as he was as a rookie, but I don't think he's any less of a player. So many guys that you have to worry about. So it is a concern if they can't get home with the pass rush.
All right, Shayne, what other matchups, anything else you want to highlight here before we get on to our predictions?
I mean, again, like you look at the secondary for this team, it played better last week, and you hope that they take a lot of that they did against the Colts and apply it to the Chargers, but it is still a weakness if you're looking at just going body for body with the receivers and secondary. Chargers, I do think, win that matchup overall, so you got to be careful with that.
I agree, and I think in some ways it's almost harder, especially when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert who can distribute the ball as well as anybody in the league, where he's not going to show favoritism. It's like a guy is open, he's open. Yeah, so and having those multiple weaknesses, we've talked about Darius Slay, we've talked about Patrick Queen and his struggles in coverage, and so you can't afford to have those in a game like this because you will get picked apart. The pass rush needs to get there. You got to give them at least enough time to get home too, like the secondary did against the Colts. And when that happens, good things happen for Pittsburgh. You can't rely on those 6 takeaways like they had last week, because before that, Shayne, they went 2 straight games without taking the football away. And in the last month before that, they took the ball away twice. Yeah. And so you can't rely on those huge splash performances like that. So that brings us to our game predictions for Steelers versus Chargers, Week 10, Sunday Night Football. Should be a good game. 2 of the upper echelon teams in the AFC right now, seeding on the line. We can already look ahead to playoff seeding like we talked about. Potentially, and I say that with a big asterisk next to it, big quotation, potentially in the running for that top seed still. You're not technically eliminated until you're eliminated.
And you have wins over the guys who are 1 and 2 right now. So
and that's true.
That is something to consider.
And that's a good point. If Steelers were to advance to 6 and 3, they have the tiebreaker over the New England Patriots, who are the 2nd seed in the AFC. They have the tiebreaker over the Indianapolis Colts, who are the 1st seed in the AFC right now. So there is still a shot. I think it's grim because of you got the Bills, you got the Lions, you got the Ravens twice on the schedule.
Tough games,
Yeah. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But important game to say the least. Big AFC matchup here. Shayne, who do you have in week 10, Steelers or Chargers?
I do have the Steelers. I think they keep this train rolling a little bit longer. I have this sneaking suspicion that this season is going to ultimately look, surprise everybody, a lot like last year, where you start off really hot, 8-3 potentially even, right? And then you have a couple tough losses. You start getting on a slide near the end of the season, and it comes down to, can you win one of those last couple games to solidify your playoff spot? They were able to make it last year despite the 4-game losing streak to end the year, but it was tough sledding. I think we are setting up for a similar situation this year, but I do think they at least get to that point where we can even talk about it. I will say Steelers 24, Chargers 20. I think it's a little bit of a rough game for both offenses in some ways, but I think that the Chargers ultimately just are too banged up probably in the front five with their offensive line to win this game.
Interesting, Shayne. And I sent my prediction to Ryan.
I need to remember to do that. I keep forgetting this.
I sent my because Ryan's been keeping track of all these. But if you want to go back, we got them all archived just before the games. But my prediction is Steelers 24-21.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're very like-minded in this one. I know they're on the road. I know they're traveling across.
Is it a road game with the Chargers, unfortunately, for them?
I mean, that fan base, the Steelers will have as many fans as
for sure. They do that to a lot of teams, but still, yeah.
But you still have the travel. I mean, you're still crossing time zones. There's always that factor that comes into play here. Like I said, they were embarrassed, quite frankly, on their last two primetime games. I do think that Mike Tomlin is going to have them in a better situation to be amped up for this game. I'm encouraged by the defense. Even if they don't get the 6 takeaways, let's say they get 1 or 2, maybe that's enough anyway, because the defense can at least play efficient. You are going against Justin Herbert, and that scares me. You can't give him too much time to throw the football. You can't let him get comfortable there. If they are able to get him uncomfortable, I like the Steelers mostly everywhere else in this game. I don't think the Steelers are going to repeat offensively as bad of a performance they had last week. The Chargers defense is much more susceptible than what the Colts was last week. And I just think that they're going to, by default, they have to improve over what they did last week. I have the Steelers in a field goal type game, 24-21. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comment section down below. We go live on this show every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. We may be going to recorded streams here soon. If you like the live stream a lot, let us know with a comment, because we'd love to be able to keep that going for you if that's something that you like. You can check out Josh Yorish's show. He goes live on Mondays. Josh and Mark Powell, they go live post-game following Steelers game. So if you want an immediate quick reaction to Steelers games, make sure you're coming to Still Curtain for that. Make sure you're following us here on YouTube. Thank you for joining us on the show today. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Still Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube, or ask Alexa to play the Still Curtain podcast. Make sure you're following our written content on stillcurtain.com. Thanks again for listening to the Still Curtain podcast.